after the conference. For those of you who may not have had the opportunity to attend part 1 of this presentation, Tamaria Mace serves in leadership as the Assistant Director of Sponsored Programs Subawards Division at the University of Central Florida. She is a subject matter expert in subawards and has a Master of Business Administration and is a certified research administrator. She has worked in the research administration field since 2008. Danielle is a Subaward Specialist 3 in the Subaward Unit, Office of Research at the University of Central Florida. She has worked in sponsored research for over 10 years and at UCF for over 8 years. Danielle has been working in subawards for over 3 years, and prior to that, she held several positions in sponsored research at UCF as a coordinator, proposal manager, and contract manager. Good afternoon, Tamaria and Danielle.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. We hope everyone is enjoying the conference thus far. Today, we are going to be doing the Managing Subawards Life Cycle Part 2. And our agenda for today is going to be, we're going to be discussing the award stage, negotiation, post-award stage, monitoring and invoices, closeout, and then the key takeaways. So we're going to get started today. Next slide, please. With subawards at time of award. So after the proposal has been submitted, and then we are now, the prime award has been accepted and we've been funded, and now we're at time of the award. So at this point in time, the subawards, at this point, we need to make sure we have our prime award that has been executed and is ready to go. Any revised subaward documents. So that means if the budget was changed, the scope of work may have changed, or anything that may have changed from the time of proposal to now the time of the award, we would need all of those revised subaward documents for all sub-recipients under the agreement. IRCOOK or IRB protocols, if there's anything that we needed to get approved in those departments or any other departments within your institution or organization, you want to make sure you have all of that stuff ready to go as it applies to the subawards. And then any additional contracts. So if you need an MTA, a CDA, a MOU, equipment loan, DTUA, or any other type of additional agreement that may need to be incorporated into the subaward agreement, we want to make sure that we have that ready to go while we're getting ready to prepare the subaward, draft the subaward agreement and get it ready to send it out to the subrecipients. So before we move on, we want to just do a quick poll question. So we're going to do poll question number 2. And the poll question is, we're going to have Elizabeth put that poll question up for you guys. And the poll question is, what percentage of your institution or organization subaward agreements are fixed price? So we're going to do poll question number 2. That's poll question number, okay. Okay. Okay, so it looks like 0 to 24% was 52%, and then the rest of them, 100%, 75 to 100% is 16%. Okay, wow, that's more percentage, higher percentage than I expected. Okay, so we can stop sharing those. Thank you, guys. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So now the next slide is the difference between cost reimbursable and fixed price subawards, 2 types of subaward agreements. For cost reimbursable, they're generally non-commercial. Sub works until funds are exhausted, may or may not complete scope of work. Administrative controls are usually greater with no financial incentive, payment tied to expenditures, and unspent funds revert to sponsor. Then versus fixed price subaward agreements. They generally are used for commercial supplies or services. Payment is usually tied to acceptable deliverables. Maximum incentive to control costs with minimal admin burden. May keep the balance if funds remain after completion of deliverables, and better option if greater control over the subaward is required. So, outgoing subawards may be issued with either a cost reimbursable, which is the most common way, or a fixed price payment mechanism. Issuing fixed price subawards from federal grants may require a sponsor's prior approval. So you have to be careful if you're trying to do a fixed price subaward agreement. You want to make sure that your sponsor doesn't require prior approval for that. So if that is the case, you want to make sure you have that prior approval before issuing that subaward agreement. Attaining prior approval can be avoided, however, if the subaward is listed as fixed price within the proposal. So per 200.332, fixed amount subawards with prior written approval from the federal awarding agency, a pass-through entity may provide subawards based on fixed amounts up to the simplified acquisition threshold, fixed. So if under a federal award, if the prime award was fixed, it is a strong possibility that you can do the subaward agreement as a fixed price agreement also. We're going to go to the next slide, please. So we use the FTP templates for our federal flow through subaward agreements. And then there's just two different, if you go to the FTP website, there's two different templates that they have out there, one for cost, one for fixed, and those are what we use. Now, please note that these have been recently updated, which they were updated in December of last year. So if you're using some and you haven't went back to the website since then, you may want to go to the website and get the most recent updated version. So make sure that you have the most recent updated version of those different type of agreements. So reasons for why we might want to issue a cost reimbursable agreement versus a fixed price agreement. So reasons for why we might want to issue one that is cost reimbursable: if the scope of work can be sufficiently detailed at start to create specific milestones. Cost analysis at proposal stage is easier, more control over spending. You can monitor by budget line item. And then why you may not want to use a cost reimbursable agreement is if the subrecipient runs out of money, they aren't required to continue working. So you have to make sure you take that into consideration if you decide to, if you're going to be issuing a cost reimbursable agreement. Reasons for why you might want to issue a fixed price agreement if you are allowed to do that. The subrecipient has freedom to rebudget within funding ceiling, limited financial reporting, which is a less administrative burden. The risk is on subrecipient to provide our work within established price. Effective ways to provide initial funds to cash-strapped organizations, and your payments are tied to deliverables provide incentive to complete the work. Why you may not want to issue one is the comprehensive price analysis needs to be done up front before a subaward is issued. The scope of work and deliverables or milestones schedule needs to be specified and detailed. And modifications on price cannot occur unless there is a corresponding increase in scope of work, tasks, or deliverables. And one final reason for why you may not want to is subrecipients must perform work for a fixed price. If they run out of money, they may lose incentive to complete the performance. So those are the differences between the cost reimbursable and the fixed price agreements.
Thank you, Danielle. Next slide, Elizabeth. So as Danielle has just gone through the difference between cost reimbursable and fixed price, we're going to have a breakout session. I'm going to read the case study to you, and we're going to break you out, and we would like you to determine, based on the information that you have, would you issue this subrecipient a cost reimbursable or fixed price subaward, and what are your reasons for making those decisions? The case study starts. You're issuing a new subaward to Madison Foundation, a domestic nonprofit organization. Their scope of work is exploratory in nature, and their costs cannot be precisely determined. The research on this project could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to complete. Please work in your groups and discuss why you would issue Madison Foundation either a cost reimbursable or a fixed price subaward. Welcome back, everybody. The breakout rooms are closing, so we're letting everybody get back into all the participants to get back into the main room. While that is happening, does any group would like to start sharing what their decision was and why they made their decision?
Mario, someone has asked if you can show the slides that speaks to the differences again.
Yes, we can. Elizabeth, can you go back?
It's 2 slides. Go back 2 slides. There you go.
Okay, and then we also have some responses.
Go ahead, Celeste, please.
Okay, so room 10, Dana wrote, they decided on cost reimbursement since the length and cost is undetermined.
Excellent.
Room 9, Sarah has said decided on cost reimbursable. And room 5, Linda decided on cost reimbursement as well. And then we have another comment from Repat. I believe it should be a cost reimbursable with a not to exceed total. Linda added to her previous comment, the reason was due to vague statement of work, uncertain time frame, etc.
Wonderful. Thank you for everybody that responded. Everybody that did responded is correct. In this particular case, you would definitely want to issue a cost reimbursable agreement. A fixed price subaward would not be appropriate in this case because the scope of work is not clear. Also, the cost, there's no cost estimates. It cannot be defined, no defined deliverables. Additionally, the inherently unpredictable nature of research limits the availability of specific research outcomes in advance. Actually, most subawards actually do not meet the requirements needed to be a fixed price subaward. So everybody was correct. Thank you so much, everybody that participated. But yes, in this case, you would definitely want to issue a cost reimbursable subaward agreement. So thank you again. Elizabeth, can we advance the slides, please? On to the next one. Thank you. So now that we've determined the difference between cost reimbursable and fixed, when we are issuing our subawards as pass-through entities, the uniform guidance requires us to enter certain elements. There are certain elements that must be included in our subawards. So with 2 CFR 200-331, we as pass-through entities have to ensure that every subaward is clearly defined to the subrecipient as a subaward, and that it includes the following information at the time of subaward. And if any of those data elements change, we need to include those subsequent changes in our subaward modifications. Elizabeth, next slide, please.
Maria, we have another question.
Okay, go ahead, Celeste. Thank you.
Lauren asked, is there a way to set a ceiling for cost reimbursable subawards?
You can, to set a ceiling in your agreement, absolutely, yes, you can. We do have cost reimbursable subawards that are quite large, but they do have a ceiling. So yes, you can set a ceiling that we're going to issue you this amount over the project, but you cannot exceed this particular amount. So yes, you can do that. Just because it is cost reimbursable, it doesn't negate you from doing so. So you can set a ceiling with your subrecipients. Yes, you can.
Okay, and then we have a question from Donna. Are you stating that exploratory research does not limit the use for fixed?
You would not want to use a fixed price award with exploratory research. One of those reasons is your deliverables and what is being delivered. Your fixed price awards need to be basically tied to your deliverables. You would not be able to really do that with exploratory because you don't know what they're going to deliver. So that it would be very hard for you to meet the example of what the federal government allows for fixed price under exploratory, completely exploratory. Because you have to remember there has to be a cost price analysis of everything that's being done up front. So that would be pretty difficult for you as a pass-through entity or that subrecipient to determine that. So I hope that answers your question as to why that would probably be a no-go.
She said, thanks for reiterating that.
Welcome. Any other questions currently, Celeste?
No further questions right now.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to go into these 14 requirements. Again, these are requirements of our uniform guidance of items, data items that we must include in our subawards. So our first one is our federal award identification, subrecipient name, the subrecipient's unique identifier, which is currently the DUNS number. That is changing. I just want to make a note of that. Your unique identifier number, UEI, is a number assigned to all entities of public and private individuals, institutions, or organization who register to do business with the federal government. As of, I believe, April, this was supposed to go into effect last year because of COVID. That did not happen. Currently, it's supposed to go into effect April of 2022. Well, the government will stop using the DUNS number and will transition over to that uniquely identifier number, and that'll be registered in SAM. So just to make a note of that UID number and that DUNS number is going away, and that will be replaced by a UEI number for everybody that does business with the government. Your federal award identification number, which is your FAME, your federal award date, the subaward period of performance, amount of funding obligated by this action, the total amount of funds that will be obligated to the subrecipient, and the total amount of federal award committed to the subrecipient by the pass-through entity, the federal award project description, the name of the federal awarding agency, pass-through entity, contact information, CFDA number. I want to stop and talk about this a little bit because this is also a change. With the new uniform guidance, with the Code of Federal Domestic Assistance, that is actually changing to assistant listing numbers. So I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but that change is in progress. It will no longer be a CFDA number. It will be a assistant listing number, a ALN number. So this is changing for people who are not aware of what the CFDA numbers are. Those numbers are basically assigned to federal programs and project services activities to provide assistance to benefits of the American public. So these can typically be found on your federal grants, your cooperative agreements. These numbers will be found on your notices of awards, and are used for your reporting and your auditing. So just to make that clear, because we are all used to seeing the CFDA number, that is also in the process of being changed with the new uniform guidance. So you will see new numbers there. Next, the identification of whether that award is research and development, and additionally, what the indirect cost rate for that funding award, including that 10% de minimis.
Samaria?
Yes.
Can you please restate the name of the replacement title for the CFDA, and what is that number again? The assisted listing number.
Absolutely. It's called Assistance Listing Number, or ALN. That will be the new number, and it is the same number. It used to be called the CFDA number. So they're changing the naming of it's not called CFDA anymore. Now it's called Assistance Listing Number. Not sure why they made that change, but that is the change. And again, that number is assigned to all federal programs, projects, services, or activities that provide assistance or benefit to the American public. And that is found on your federal grants, your cooperative agreements. This number is found on your notices of award. And again, this is only federal, because I get that question a lot when I am issuing contracts. Your contract will not have a CFDA number or a ALN number. This is only federal assistance awards, and these numbers are used in governmental reporting and auditing. And I hope that answers your question. Did we have anything else, Celeste?
No, not at this time.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to move on to our next slide. So our next slide is, okay, we've decided what type mechanism we're going to use to issue our subaward. We have our requirements, our required data elements that we're going to include in our subawards. Now we get down to some of the meat and potatoes, which is our subaward negotiations, terms and conditions, and flowdowns. So you have to understand your institutions and your sponsor regulations and policies, because you have your guidelines from your prime award, but you also have policies and procedures and guidelines from your institution. I can definitely say that us being a state institution, that comes into play a lot. And sometimes those guidelines and policies and procedures can be restricting. And they can compete with each other. So you have to be aware of both of those when you're issuing your subaward. You want to make sure that you include all applicable terms and conditions, special provisions, certificates detailed in the prime awards that are required to be passed down to your subrecipient. Everything that is required by your prime must be flowed through to your sub. Some things you want to be aware of when you're issuing a subaward, because there are clauses that can be troublesome. Number one being indemnification. As a state institution, I know UCF, we do not, our policy is not to indemnify anyone. Of course, we will make exceptions, but indemnification can be a very big issue. So that's something that you have to look out for. At publication, we do not accept restrictions on publication. You would be wise to be mindful of that as well, because once you start restricting publication, you get out of the realm of fundamental research. So you have to be careful when talking about restrictions on publications. A huge one is intellectual property. Huge issue. You have to be very careful with intellectual property. You have to make sure that you are following by DOL when you're issuing federal awards at UCF. With intellectual property, it's what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and what we create jointly is owned by both parties. So that's what we stand with intellectual property. Governing law is something that we in Florida experience a lot, because we are a state agency, and with our general counsel, they like, of course, to say that we are the governing body. If there are any issues and disputes, they would be handled in Florida, which of course our non-Florida institutes do not accept. So sometimes we have to go reserved on that. So that's something you need to be very aware of: governing law and confidential information, your NDAs and your CDAs. So these are just some troublesome clauses that you want to look out for, that you want to really try to negotiate what's best for both institutions when you have these clauses in your agreements. So be flexible in your negotiations as well collaborative in your approach. You have to remember when you are negotiating, it's to reach a goal that's beneficial for both parties. But you can only, again, accept what you're allowed to within the realm of the law and what is appropriate in the terms and conditions, because you still have to meet those terms and conditions in your prime award.
Hey, Tamaria, we have a follow-on question.
Okay, yes.
Back to the assisted listing number. Will the purpose of it change or just the title?
I'm sorry, Celeste, you went out a little bit. Can you say that one more time?
Sure. Will the purpose of it change or just the title will change?
Just the title. The purpose remains exactly the same. It's just the actual title that is changing of what that number used to be called. So again, I don't know what the purpose of the change is because it serves the same exact purpose, but it is a name change. And I definitely point that out. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this, why I think that's an important one, because if you're like this institution, as we saw most of your institutions, you issue federal subawards, that's going to be a change. If you're using the FTP templates, that information is in the process of being changed on the template. So I just wanted to point that out to you. But it means the same thing. The purpose is not changing.
Okay, some additional questions. Jacqueline asked, does your organization issue the use of name terms in your subawards?
We do not allow people to use our name. So we do have for our non-federal, because again, with the federal, we use the FD templates, DP templates, but we do not give anybody the right to use our name. So we do restrict that.
Okay, and a question from Karen. NIH has already, or a comment actually, NIH has already made the change to assisted listing number on the NOA. Thank you, Karen.
That's good, Karen. I haven't seen any yet. I haven't gotten any new NOAs yet, so I have not actually seen it yet, but thank you so much for letting us know that.
And we have a question from Molly. Could you please give an example of a troublesome provision with respect to publication?
Okay, definitely. I can definitely give you an example. So let's say that you want to, publication is restricted for some reason on one of your projects that may have a graduate student on that particular project that needs to use that information in their dissertation. So they need that for their thesis, or they need that to graduate. That would be a problem if you could not allow them to publish that information because you have a restriction on publication. So you have to be very mindful of that. And again, you have to think about, what the research that we do here, when we're doing, especially federal research, the point is to disseminate the information. So once you start going into publication restrictions for whatever reason, you are really negating that fundamental research exemption that you have. So you have to be very careful with respect to publication, because that's the whole point, is to disseminate the information with federal research.
Okay, thank you.
Have any other
Linda
questions?
did make a comment that they do have one from December 30th.
They do have, I'm sorry, Celeste, they have one.
I
What?
think she's referring to the assistance listing number.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Celeste.
Sure.
Okay. Next. So we're moving right along with our award. We have decided what mechanism we're going to use. We know the information that we have to include. We are looking at our terms and conditions and what our restrictive or troublesome clause could be. Now we have to get into mitigating risk and reporting requirements. So with our 2 CFR 200-331, it does require us as pass-through entities to implement risk management tools to ensure proper accountability, compliance with program requirements and achievement of performance goals. Examples of available risk management tools include desk audits, providing subrecipients with training and technical assistance on program-related manners, additional monitoring of programmatic aims and invoices, stringent review of audits and prompt action when instances of non-compliance are identified, enforcement actions for non-compliance, including temporary withholding of payments, disallowing costs when all or part of the costs are non-compliant, or partially or wholly suspending or terminating the subaward without further funds from the project or any legal available remedies. So again, we are required to manage the risk. You have to manage your sub through the whole life cycle. Once you issue a sub, they are yours, they belong to you. So you do have to manage them through the whole process. Additionally, what we're going to talk about is some of the reporting requirements and how to set those up and what reporting requirements you might want to include with your subrecipients. Elizabeth, next slide, please. So with mitigating risk in your reporting requirements, or deliverables is how we like to refer to them at our institution, it's important that your deliverables and your reporting requirements correspond to the reporting requirements of your prime award. Meaning if your prime requires you to submit a progress report, then you need to have your subrecipient submit a progress report, but you need to have that subrecipient submit that report either a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on that level of risk, before your report is due. So that can be included in your report to the prime. So when you're thinking about that, you have to think about when are my deliverables due to the prime. Additionally, some additional technical reporting requirements that you need to, your technical reports, your financial reports, your invention reports, or any equipment or property reports. So you definitely want to have good deliverables, and you definitely want to be able to, again, manage that progress. You need to know if your subrecipient is on task or not. If you're getting delinquent deliverables, that is usually an indication that there is something wrong. So reporting and your deliverables are very important. And you also want to make sure when you're dealing with your subrecipients that you get the reports that you need so you can fulfill your requirement to the prime. Next slide, please. So, mitigating risk. We've just talked about mitigating risk and tools that you can use to mitigate risk. So we're going to do another breakout room. With this breakout room, we want you to strategize and utilize what strategies do you use at your institution to mitigate subrecipient noncompliance? For example, failure to perform, late invoices, non-compliance of flow down terms and conditions. What does your institution do to mitigate these risks with your subrecipients? So Elizabeth, we want to give the participants 5 minutes, please, and then bring them back. And we would like, what do you do at your institution? What are some tools, trades, tricks that you use to mitigate that risk? Hi, everybody. Welcome back. The breakout rooms are closing, so we're letting, give a little time for the participants all to enter back in. So as they share their results, Celeste, would you read some of those out to us? You know, what strategies at your institution do you use to mitigate subrecipient noncompliance? And you can put those in chat. And if you want us to unmute you, we can do that as well so you can speak. Thank you, Celeste.
Okay, we have a comment from Deborah. She was actually in a breakout room by herself, but she wanted to give her response. As for our institution, we are very small and our PIs are very proactive in monitoring any issues with their subawards. and they keep OSP in the loop and notified if there are any issues.
Thank you, Deborah. We are so sorry that you were in a room by yourself, but clearly you're excellent and special. So you know exactly what to do. Wonderful.
Okay, and then we have from group 9, Ruth writes, in my institution, we do not pay the bills if they do not submit the progress reports. We also reduce the subaward amount.
Those are all great remedies, Ruth.
Okay, and group 8, Russ says, we use the risk assessment tool and adding language to require additional supporting documentation when there is a history of late payments or poor performance.
That's another excellent remedy, Russ.
Okay, Tim says that group 2 had 2 people. Tim, if you want to provide any comments, you can in the chat. And then we have a comment from Linda, room 16, discuss reviewing all ledgers, detailed invoicing, insert additional terms and conditions as needed due to poor performance in invoicing as part of risk assessment. Seems as there was a number of us that review the invoices in detail, then have the PI review prior to approving.
Thank you, Linda. We do the same thing here at UCF. It is reviewed in the Office of Research and by the PI. The PI actually certifies to those invoices, and that's definitely time to discuss if there are any performance issues with that subrecipient. So thank you.
Okay, and then Cindy Bradfield says our group had 2 ways. One required approval before the expenditures. My state agency reviews closer to the end of the project and can be difficult at that time to correct the issues after it has already happened. Would prefer pre-approval.
I agree, Cindy. It is pretty difficult after you have paid to correct that or try to get those funds back for some reason.
Okay, and Tim writes, I'm in the department, not an AP, but I have monthly reminders on my calendar for at least one subaward.
Excellent, Tim.
Okay, additional comment from Linda. Yes, our institute requires PI approval of all subaward invoices. And Donna, at Yale, they certify with PI for sub invoice payment as well.
Awesome. All excellent remedies. You definitely want to have your PI certify those invoices. They're the ones that are working with that subrecipient, with that partnership, and they know what if things are not being met, if they're not meeting those deliverables, or if there is some type of performance issue, your PI is going to be that first point of contact or that first person to alert you in the offices that there may be an issue with their subrecipient. So all wonderful and great remedies for mitigating risk. Thank you, Celeste. We're going to go to the next slide, please.
Okay, guys, so we've decided what type of subaward agreement we're going to do. We've negotiated the terms. We've mitigated all the risks. We've had both party legal offices approve them. Now we are ready to execute the sub agreement. Once the subaward is signed by both parties, it's now fully executed. The subcontractor should not begin working without a fully executed subcontract in place. Now, I'm sure we all know that's not normally the case. They tend to start working a little early, but you should not be working without a subcontract agreement in place. What's next after the sub has been fully executed is time to do a requisition. At least in our institution, that's what we do. We have to do a requisition, which we have to create a purchase order, and then a PO number is assigned to all subaward agreements. Our subrecipients do not see that PO number on their executed agreement, but we do internally have purchase order numbers assigned to all our sub agreements and subrecipients or sub agreements. Go to the next slide, please, Elizabeth. So, subawards at post-award. So once the agreement has been executed and your subrecipient is working, your internal PI and department is working, everything is good, and then all of a sudden we're at post-award stage, and then some things might come up in the process of the agreement. You may need prior approval. So if that is the case, and you need prior approval from your prime agency, you should not proceed without receiving that prior approval. So these are a couple reasons for why you may need prior approval for your subawards to do if something happens in the subaward agreement, if there's a change in the scope of work, a change in the subrecipient PI, a change in the period of performance, assurance of a third tier subaward issuance, acquisition of unbudgeted equipment, significant changes to the budget, change in subrecipient if you need to go from one subrecipient to another one, and adding a subrecipient who was not originally proposed. Now, in all prime awards, you may not need prior approval for all of these, but you may need prior approval from some of these. So if that is necessary, make sure you're getting that prior approval from your prime agency before you proceed with allowing your subrecipient to do any of these things. Go to the next slide, please, Elizabeth.
Okay, Danielle, we have Linda wrote, when we have a pending subaward, our institute allows for an advanced budget with enough documentation to minimize the at-risk aspect of an advanced budget. Thus, our PI can begin work, but again, with enough information that the AOR director will approve it.
Okay, so we do allow at our institution pre-award setups also, but there are processes and procedures in place that must be done prior to that. So we also have that option at our institution, where in some cases you can begin working prior to, but you should have received all of those internal approvals and everything that you need before proceeding with doing that.
Okay, we just have a comment. Some sub-projects may need startup costs to commence recruiting for TBN staff and subjects.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on. Subawards at post-award. So in addition to those prior approvals, there are different reasons for why you may need amendments or modifications, same difference. Incremental funding is being given to the subrecipient. You're extending the period of performance, modifying the reporting schedule, issuing a no-cost extension, administrative or personnel changes and updates. So for any of those reasons, you may need to do an amendment or amendment to your subrecipient. So if that's the case, you should get that amendment done and get it to the subrecipient so they can continue working under a valid and active sub agreement. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. So now we're going to get into subaward monitoring. So after your sub agreement has been executed, the subrecipients are working. Now we want to make sure that the proper subaward monitoring is happening through the life of the sub agreement. So monitoring is done through the life of the subaward agreement, not just at the end. So we want to make sure that everyone is doing their part within the institution as well as at the subrecipient agency. Once the subrecipient agreement has been fully executed by both parties, the management and monitoring of the subaward performance begins. Monitoring subrecipient is a shared responsibility. Pass-through entity monitoring of the subrecipient must include reviewing financial and performance reports required by the pass-through entity, following up and ensuring that the subrecipient takes timely and appropriate action on all deficiencies pertaining to the federal award, issuing a management decision for audit findings pertaining to the federal award as required by 2 CFR 200-521. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. Thank you. So with Subaward Monitoring, we're going to go the PI and department monitoring of ongoing activities. The PI and department admin is responsible for monitoring subcontractors to ensure compliance with federal regulations in both prime and subcontractor award terms and conditions, and review invoices to approve expenditures and progress on the statement of work. The PI is responsible for monitoring all fiscal and programmatic aspects of a subaward, at least at our institution. Every institution is different, but for the most part, this is something that should be done by the PI or his department admins. Progress monitoring technical reports and deliverables. The PI monitors the technical progress of a subrecipient's performance as defined in the scope of work of the subaward. Progress reports and deliverables are reviewed for completion by the PI. Invoicing, the PI must review and sign all invoices for subcontractors before they can be paid by UCF. The PI needs to verify that the subcontractor is conducting the scope of work required under the project and that the costs incurred by the subcontractor are reasonable for the work accomplished. Invoices should not be paid if there are outstanding deliverables from the subcontractor. Every institution is different, but we also want to make sure that the PIs, because this is their projects, that they are fully aware of what is going on. Per 2 CFR Part 200 requires the pass-through entity pay subrecipient invoices issued under a federal prime award within 30 calendar days after receipt of the invoice, unless the invoice is believed to be improper. So now this is how, so every institution is different as far as who monitors their their progress reports, technical reports, deliverables, who approves their invoices. Every institution is different. So we're going to pull up a poll question, and the poll question is going to be, it's going to be poll question number 3. And we want you guys to fill it out right quickly because for time's sake, we're going to go over it real quickly. Who's responsible for monitoring the technical progress of reports of the subawardee within your institution or organization? So can we have you pull that up right quick for us, Elizabeth? PI, so a combination. Then we have a couple other, okay, now we have people saying their central office is responsible. So the majority is PI only in both central office and PI, but it seems like every institution is pretty much different, but those are the majority. Thank you guys for filling that out for us. At our institution, it is the PI in the department, and then for invoices, we have our, we're going to go to the next slide because we're already for time's sake. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so review of invoices, guys. So this is basically our setup at our institution for how we review our invoices. So just for you guys to see it, it goes through quite a few different hands, but this is how we do it at our institution. The subrecipient submits, it goes to our vendor payable office, and then they review it. Then our PI department review it. Then it has to go to our grants accounting office, who after the PI has a review and approve it, then it goes through their hands and then back to our vendors payable, which is who submits the payment to our sub-recipients. So that is how we do it at our institution. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. So after all of that, you have your award, you have your agreement, you have your sub-recipient, you did everything, it's been good, invoices have been paid, and now we are ready for it to end and close it out. These are the steps at the end once you are ready to close out your sub-recipient. I'm just going to go through them quickly. Subawards must be closed at the end of the project. Subawards closeout must be completed prior to prime closeout. So you want to make sure you have all your subaward documents closed out prior to getting your prime award done. Closeout information. The subrecipient final report and invoice should be due at least 60 days before the prime award due date. You don't want your sub documents, final deliverables, and final information due at the same date as your prime award, because if not, it's going to be hard for you to get your prime award information done. So you want to we always set ours up where we do it advance. We do it earlier than our prime award due dates. The pass-through entity must ensure that all required technical and final reports and deliverables have been received, that cost-sharing commitments, if applicable, have been met, and the final invoice is accurate, complete, and marked final, so we can pay our sub-recipients. I apologize for talking so fast. I'm trying to go through it, guys. So that is our closeout process, and once we close out the subaward, we are good to go, and everyone has done their job successfully as far as the subaward agreement process. So we're going to go to our next slide, Elizabeth. Thank you. Our key takeaways from our presentation have been our proper subaward preparation, PSP, the stages of a subaward, the risk assessment, helpful tools and tricks, proper subaward monitoring and invoicing, the steps for determining what type of subaward is needed, and the who, what, and when at proposal, at award, and at post-award stage of a subrecipient agreement.
Okay, one last question. What was the answer to the second poll question?
The second poll question today, the second one, second poll question or the third poll question, which was the second today?
They just wrote the second. It could be that it was the third one.
Well, there wasn't a right or wrong answer. It was just trying to see, but the majority of the people put PI monitors and reviews their documents, PI and then central office NPI, combination of the both. So it wasn't a right or wrong. It was just the majority had the PI only, and then the PI and then the central office, a combination of the both. I hope that answers.
And so that question, Danielle, will, or for those who are thinking what question was she talking about, who's responsible for monitoring the technical progress report and reports of the subawardee within your institution organization? So that is the question that Danielle is giving the poll results for.
Thank you, Tamara. And that was poll question number 3 today. Well, it was poll question number 3, but poll question number 2 today. And I think she put it back up.
Danielle, here's the poll again, question number 3.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And final slide, do we have any final questions from anyone?
There are no more questions.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate everyone for attending.
Danielle, here is the result after relaunching the poll, if you want to take a look.
Yes, so the final results was PI only at 41%. These were the two highest. PI only at 41%, and then both central office and PI at 56%. We did have central office only with a 3%. So majority of the people were both central office and PI or either PI only. Those were the final results. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Sure thing.
Any further questions, Celeste?
No further questions in the chat.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending this presentation for the Subaward Lifecycle. I know it was long. Unfortunately, with Subawards, it could actually be longer. So we do appreciate you for attending, and we hope you find the information useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so we thank you to Mary and Danielle for this very informative session today. This concludes our session on managing the Subaward cycle part 2. I want to thank everyone for participating, and please join us for our next session, Asset Construction, It's a Piece of Cake, led by Mary Stanley at 2:30. Please join us also in our breakout rooms prior to the next session. We'll see everyone back here at 2:30. Thanks.